All right, today at Solus Partners, we are really excited to have Sergio on from Bitloops. They have a very innovative solution that complements development teams looking for supplement for tools like Cursor. Sergio, would you be able to tell us a little bit about your story and just what you guys are up to?
Sure. So we started Bitloops about 3 years ago. My partner and I, Vasilis, we were at an Uber-style company here in Europe, which actually recently got acquired by Lyft, actually. So I was managing the Portuguese operations, Vasilis was managing the Greek operations, and we decided to leave that and set up and start our own thing. And the initial focus was we wanted to build something around DevTool. So we got really frustrated at how difficult it was for even a medium-sized company to roll out new features, stuff that seemed pretty easy. And our initial vision was to try and do something around the business logic, so the back-end work. How could we automate and just make it much easier for teams to build and iterate on this business logic? So that was the first version of Bitloops, let's say, and we actually even released what we call the Bit language. It transpiled into TypeScript. It leveraged AI, and it was pretty interesting. Technically, it was very challenging. But what we found was that when we spoke to developers and the way the market was evolving, particularly given AI, it was very hard to actually get many people interested in using this particular tool. So if we spoke to the developers, two of them were like, wow, this is unbelievable. This is amazing. But eight of them were like, yeah, I can see the value, but it just wasn't enough, pull from the market, let's say. But in the end, what we were doing was we were doing requirements and using tools, using our own AI models, using our own non-AI models to generate good quality code. And that was always a focus of ours, was generate code that you could use in the production setting. So, professional grade, let's say, style code. One that you could iterate, you could understand quickly, you could maintain yourself as a developer, etc. So when we started looking at what we had built and what was out there, we realized that, designs are basically a requirement that has some structure, not the most structured, but there's some structure around it. And given what we had built, we could probably use that and convert it into code. So when we started speaking to developers about this, we got a lot more excitement. So there was definitely a much bigger pull from developers. The fact that they spend, hours, days, looking at CSS values, tweaking this, tweaking that, downloading images from design, back and forth with their designers, etc. It was pretty clear that this was something that could help many developers. So that's what sort of started this journey. We've been on this particular product or version of the product for the past, let's say, 12 to 15 months. We've been able to raise some money from investors, and it's been an interesting journey, definitely. We have launched a prototype, got some feedback, and now we're working on the release of our first MVP, which should hit the market soon.
That sounds like well timing, especially considering the rise of just that vibe coding type trend. So I imagine you guys are playing into that.
Well, yes and no. I would say that, of course, vibe coding is growing in popularity, and we've tried it, and it's great for a few things. But I would say that what we're trying to build is something a bit deeper in the sense that, I mean, it's very specific to designs to code right now. And later on, we hope to go into state management, API integration, even backend. But when you're working with some of these tools to vibe code, yeah, you're able to get the initial thing up and running quite quickly. But very soon you get into very difficult problems, and the system just isn't capable of understanding what it was you want to do, being able to refactor backwards. So, a friend of mine, his wife started a business on one of those platforms, and he was like, "Wow, she's amazed, she's loving it, blah blah blah." And about 3 weeks later, he called me and he said she's basically given up. It's just consuming so many credits. She doesn't understand code. She needs now a developer to come in, etc. So I think it's great for prototyping and MVPs. It's fantastic. We've tried it. But our vision was always trying to build a tool that the actual developer in a company would use to ship, would use to close their PRs. So it's slightly different from that perspective. And I think right now you might use some of the vibe coding techniques in these companies to build very specific things, but then it gets reviewed intensely for security reasons. So a professional developer is taking a look at it. So that's where we want to, let's say, fit ourselves. It's more towards that professional developer. Not that a non-professional developer couldn't pick it up and actually learn with us, but it's definitely targeted to professional developers working on these more complex projects.
That's some really helpful clarity. How would you describe the profile of your early testers and users?
Yeah, so they're normally front-end engineers, full-stack engineers that are working on semi-complex projects. Right? They've got a team that has designers, so they want to abide by certain design systems, and they're working on complex projects that they want to iterate, they want to build on top, right? And they understand that logic and that code. code base well. But they do have these requirements for high quality, high fidelity designs. That's the teams that we work on. Right now, it might take them, I don't know, a week to convert the landing page or a website, because they have to go back and forth with the CSS and the paddings and the margins and getting the CSS and responsiveness right, etc. So with a tool like Bitloops, we're able to do, let's say, 90% of that work for them. And then they can actually, the 10%, which is the value adding stuff, they can dedicate more time to it and actually do a better job of actually architecturing the state management, etc. So the truth is, when you think about what's happening at the moment, is you've got these designers that are specifying everything on a design tool like Figma, let's say, and then adding everything. And here the process is not very consistent, I would say. You've got great designers, you've got less capable designers, or there's just new ways you can use these tools, and that's on purpose. These tools have to be very flexible to allow more creativity, to allow testing. This is why it's so quick to actually get a design up and running. But then a developer basically does the same thing. They need to go in and check, okay, what is the distance from here to here? What is this? What is that now to create this box? So they're recreating everything all over again, but just now in code. And it takes much longer. Okay, they do it with a final version, but it takes much longer to actually do that than it does to actually build a design. So there are tools out there that try and merge these two together. So you get these design plus code tools, which some of these, what you see is what you get, or drag and drop. You get the web flows, the Framer, the WordPress, etc., which they try and build the two, and it's a nice sweet spot there, which is not the sweet spot that we're aiming for once again. But those have limitations both from a design perspective and then from a code perspective. But it does serve a particular market. We're trying to serve the other end of the market, let's say, where they're really just doing manual coding each time, where they're still duplicating this. And now with the power of AI, which is not easy, of course, and we've been at this for like 12 months already, and still not perfect. It's not working as we would like it to work. But you would basically take designs, any design, any structure. That's the other thing. There's some tools out there that kind of work, but they need your designer to have followed a very specific way of setting up the design, and no designer does that. So it takes any design and reinterprets it. It analyzes, reinterprets it, and it's able to build then the code base like a developer would. So yeah, that's where we try to fit this.
I mean, fascinating streamline of a dev day. What is like some of the biggest benefits? I mean, obviously it's more efficient, but then for a development team, how are they reacting once they get onto the platform?
So developers are extremely critical, let's say. They have high opinions of everything. So it's not easy to satisfy these users, but they've given us a lot of feedback, and we're developers ourselves, so we know what they're looking for. But in essence, for this to work in a production setting, you need to be able to abide by the design system. You want to be able to reuse certain components. You want to be able to give components certain props and variants so that you can use it in different states. So you want to build the website or the web app in such a way that it's quite modular, that you could actually then, with just a few tweaks, change quite a few of the components. So they are very demanding, let's say. But what we're seeing is precisely this, that, they've tried these other tools out there that convert design into code, and they've used ChatGPT and all the AI tools, etc., and basically gives them code that sometimes it's okay. Most of the time it requires a lot of refactoring. And if you speak to more experienced developers, they're like, it's so confusing that I just do it from scratch, right? What it is able to do is what they tell us, once they've created the UI, let's assume that you have a particular functionality for a date check or something, then they've got their component set up. They will then ask AI, okay, I need to create this date checker functionality. Can you add it to this code? And then, yes, that particular thing it can do. But to actually convert the design into usable components, it's struggling a lot. So they're very keen on seeing the next version, the one that can integrate all these components, that actually identifies the same component in different designs and will, let's say, attach them together and create one component that is flexible and dynamic enough to accommodate the different states that it has, or viewports. Many designers, they'll create the desktop version and the mobile version. No tool right now is able to actually take that and create one component. Ours will be able to do that. So it will identify that, this component, I've got a desktop view, I've got a mobile view of this component. So put these two together and create a component with a media query that will do this particular job that is required, right? That a developer would do when they're manually coding it. So a lot of interest. A waiting list is growing weekly. Whenever we speak to developers, we're getting a lot of positive feedback, but a little bit of also skepticism. Is this going to work? Because they've tried a few of these design to code tools and they don't work very well. they can't use them really. So hopefully we're going to prove them that it is possible. But it's been a lot of R&D, a lot of testing. We've gone back and forth with different models, with different prompts, with different processes, with fine-tuning our own models, etc. So it's been a battle. And on top of it, because it's not something that we can also just launch and get an MVP, because as you're aware, developers, they need something from start to finish. Let's say it's been difficult to get that little one MVP feature out that we can get some traction, etc. So fortunately, we've got some investors on board that believe in the vision of the project, and now we're going to get a great MVP out that we believe will wow our users. At least we hope so.
That sounds really exciting. And how are you guys finding your initial kind of waitlist users?
Yeah, so we haven't been very aggressive, I would say, in the market because the team is focusing on development, on product management, etc. So we've done a few articles, we do a few social media postings, etc. Our network knows us. We've contacted several what we call our beachhead market, which are going to be, let's say, IT outsourcing houses that have many recurring projects. Because of course, this will be easier to work with for a new project. Eventually, we want to make it also convenient and useful for ongoing projects, but initially it will be really useful for new projects. So we've spoken to a lot of these agencies, mostly in Greece and in Portugal. I'm from Portugal, my partner's from Greece. I'm actually based in Cyprus myself, so a couple of companies here in Cyprus. So we've got quite a few, let's say, design partners on board, which is more than sufficient now for us to get the feedback that we need, get them to test the product when we need them to. So that's been our effort to date, let's say. But definitely when the time comes, we'll have to do a bit more in terms of outreach, in terms of content generation, etc.
I mean, that sounds like really encouraging traction. I imagine it's really satisfying just to see that initial interest.
Oh, no, for sure. I think that's what's keeping us going, let's say, is that when we speak to developers, they're like, the tool is not yet right there, but wow, this is going to be unbelievable when it does this, this, and this. So there's definitely, we feel the pull that, listen, we need this. We love where you're heading. And it's definitely showing much better signs than other tools that we've used. But yeah, get it working for us, please, type of thing. So it's very encouraging. Yeah.
So, I mean, the whole platform sounds really dynamic. Could you go into some of the challenges in the early days that you guys had to overcome to even get to this state?
Sure. I think one of the things that we've learned is that, and this goes back a little bit to, the process and the quality of data that is required. When we started with this version of Bitloops, there were a lot of questions about, AI wrappers. It's just going to be a wrapper on ChatGPT or OpenAI, etc. To be honest, one of the first things we did do was do a bit of a brute force attempt. So we had this testing experimentation platform, let's say, that would take the designs, try out, give me code, how it would work, etc. And clearly that didn't work. And we realized very early on that, listen, this process is never going to work in the near future with these type of LLMs. There's just too many decisions to be made. And only if you're a front-end engineer would you understand it, but there's just way too many decisions that you need to make to go from a design into code, even a very small code. So it became very clear that it was never going to work from a brute force perspective. So what we ended up doing was start to break down the process. How would you do this? How would you actually convert this manually? And then we started automating some of these steps. And the trouble that we found here, or the challenge that we found here, is that each of these steps, whilst really important, there's no real data out there for these sub-steps, right? Because there's a lot of decision making that you need to make that you make as a developer, given your experience, given some intuition, common sense, etc. But it's just not for that particular step that let's say we've broken it down into 20 different steps that we need to automate. For each of those steps, it's not like there is data out there that we could leverage and use. So we've had to definitely optimize and create a lot of data ourselves. We've had to think more clearly about the process and the steps themselves. But the truth is, it's definitely the path forward. We definitely see how this has worked. It's just a lot of work. It takes a lot longer to be able to build something that's sustainable, but it does also build a moat at the end of the day because it's very hard to replicate. So we do expect in the future other companies to sort of do this. They'll probably choose different steps to break down. They won't all be the same, which unclear which one would be better or worse. I'm sure they're all going to sort of work together at some point, but it does require different data. So if someone chooses, a different company were to choose 15 steps instead of 20, then it's not just that we have to go into more detail. It's literally we have different data to look at, to use in our models. That's I think the challenge is being able to identify and Here it comes to experience, it comes to being able to test quickly and iterate and pivot when needed, or break down one step into two, or merge two into one because there's no real value in breaking it down. So being able to do that quickly is going to help significantly. Yeah, that's been the main challenge. But now that we're on the right path and we're comfortable with it, we can actually see the long-term roadmap of which process we need to break down, which process we actually need to build our own very large models to make it much cheaper to use for the user as well, but also give us a competitive edge or a moat, let's say, that others wouldn't be able to build. So that's what we're focusing on now as well.
That's a really exciting product roadmap you're laying out there. What, in terms of like your team and just the investor base that you guys have cultivated, where do you see that evolving over the next 12 months?
Yeah, so we're definitely hiring, but I would say strategically. We haven't yet raised, I would say, funding to start expanding the team significantly. But also because we're still at, I would say, a bit of an R&D stage, and we still need to get a lot of features out that we're not even sure which one's going to work really well. It's easier to maintain a tighter team, one that understands the end-to-end, and one that we can just iterate ourselves quicker. So we're just much more flexible and dynamic as a team. As soon as we've got that product out there, and now we know that it's about feature building to reach more users or offer different output code, etc., then that roadmap is going to be much clearer, much more clearly defined, where we'll be able to hire and they'll execute and it'll be value for money. But until that point, we're not too eager to increase the burn rate, let's say.
It's wise.
Too much. Yeah. But we do believe, and we're actually planning a trip to the US, I would say in September, October, to start meeting with some investors there. We're quite aware that the US market is, especially the VC market, is definitely stronger for these kind of tools, particularly because the US eventually will be our primary market. We expect it to be in terms of clients. So we are planning a trip there and hopefully broaden our investor base to the US as well.
All very exciting future milestones. What, in terms of if you were a team that was looking for a tool like this, when could they expect to see kind of the first release of it?
I think in 6 weeks' time, we're going to have the new release. In the meantime, we are already releasing a few things that we test with our design partners, let's say. Not entirely clear to us when we'll actually open it to the market. So people can definitely sign up to the waiting list, and we keep on opening up to new users. We want new perspectives, etc. As time goes by, hopefully more and more users will get access to it. But what we didn't want to do, because this is very focused on the professional grade code, what we didn't want to do was open it up to a lot of users, start getting a lot of complaints of certain things and pushing us in directions or just taking attention away from the team into segments that we've decided are not, the segment right now that we want to target. Fortunately, with the design partners, it's sufficient right now for us to keep on testing, keep on iterating, keep on building. And we do launch some videos every once in a while just to get a bit of reactions from people. And we do get access, to people that reach out to us, want to test it out, etc. But yeah, I would say an actual beta product that is open to everyone, you can sign up, probably in September would be my best guess at this point.
Well, there's a lot of work to be done until then, I imagine. It's not easy. So I commend you guys on just getting there with a seemingly bootstrapped team. That's a lot of work and effort behind the scenes.
Well, actually, if I may add to that, indeed, I mean, we were bootstrapping for quite some time, and we still have some contracts ongoing. And one of the other reasons why we went into this part of the, let's say, software development automation was during our consulting gigs, the team was never keen on doing the front end work, right? So we did some apps and applications for others in financial services, etc. And the team was never keen on the front end, precisely because of the problem of, it's very mundane work, some images, merging some vectors, finding the spacing. It's just not as interesting work as managing the state or building the backend or thinking about how to scale an application. So that was actually when we started thinking and trying out other tools, and it was really poor. And that's when the team said, what if we did this actually? So it's a combination of the bootstrapping actually helped us a lot. And we've got some Figma files that we can ourselves keep on using and iterating and use for our regression tests, etc., due to these consulting gigs. So we're not disappointed that we had to go through that route either. We didn't get funding, let's say, earlier. So it actually helped us in the end.
I mean, it sounds like you guys have true kind of at least an initial product market fit, especially within that niche that you guys are serving with that front end dev team that you guys are working with.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the big question is then, can we deliver? That's still a question to be honest, that we're working on R&D perspective. We're much closer. This is why investors have invested in us now, that they can see where we're heading. And then, of course, it's about being able to serve adjacent segments of the market. And we believe we can, right? We believe we'll be able to serve startups. We'll be able to even compete with some of these low code website builders, let's say. If you have a team, and we know many teams out there that just don't build their website using manual code, they just end up using a Webflow or a framework, etc., because it's somewhat quicker. But if they had the designer and they got design and they could quickly set up the website through Bitloops in a day, then it would be a no-brainer, right? You can host it yourself. It would be, I don't know, 4 or 5 times cheaper on a monthly basis to maintain it. So there's a lot of opportunity there as well for us to go into the, let's say, the more, I don't call it a retail market, but the simpler website market as well, the landing pages, etc. It's a segment that we could also eventually target.
I mean, it sounds like you guys have a massive blue ocean in front of you.
I hope so. Well, I mean, the truth is we would love for Bitloops to be the default tool any front engineer starts a project with. Like, it would be crazy not to use Bitloops. If you have a design and you have to convert it into code, any code, because eventually the way we've set up our system, we're now offering React, but we'll be able to offer Vue, Angular, and even going to mobile, Swift, Kotlin, etc. For any instance, we believe that Bitloops could take 70, 80, 90, 100% of the work off you, offload. So it's definitely something that we believe will serve a huge segment or a huge part of the software development population. And like I said, if you could be that de facto tool that everyone's using it, like you use Git today or use VS Code, etc., that's about the
Very exciting stuff. And for viewers and listeners, how would they best get in contact with you if they wanted to learn more about BitLoops or get on the waiting list?
Yeah, so through our homepage, bitloops.com, you can sign up to the waiting list. There's a short form. And if you want to give us any particular information there, you can add in one of the boxes, one of the questions. You can just make your case, let's say, and we'd be happy to, of course, speak with you, with those developers, give them access. I'd love to learn from them as well. So yeah, that would be the best way. Alternatively, on my LinkedIn, you can find me, Sergio Pereira, at Bitloops.
Well, really appreciate your time today, Sergio. This has been a fascinating insight into BitLoops and just the front-end development improvements that you guys are offering. So we'll be
No, my
following
pleasure.
close.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks.